Hi, I'm Jessica. I am going to be reading today. I love reading aloud. I have loved reading aloud for a long time, even though I was nervous about it when I was young and I was in school and we would be called on. But now I just enjoy it. And I'm really happy to be able to be reading to you today. So what I'm going to be reading is the first chapter of The Clue in the Crumbling Wall, which is part of the Nancy Drew Mystery Series. A lot of different writers, mostly women writers, wrote under the name Carolyn Keene. This is an old copy of the book, which is kind of cool. It is a book that my friend recommended to me as one of her favorites when she read the Nancy Drew series long ago. And I have never read the Nancy Drew series before, any books in it, so this is all new to me. This particular copy of the book was published in 1945 by Grosset and Dunlap. So I'm going to begin here with Chapter 1, Strangers in the Garden. Great drops of rain pelted the sidewalk as Nancy Drew raced madly toward home, her golden hair flying in the stiff breeze. This is going to be a bad storm, the girl thought, glancing up anxiously at the boiling black clouds. All along the residential street, people were running to shelter. Doors and windows were being closed hastily. The summer day had been unusually sultry, but now the air was chilly. The wind blew in strong gusts, whipping the trees and bushes wildly. A large branch from a maple crashed down directly in front of Nancy. A woman on a porch saw the girl and called to her anxiously. "Won't you wait here until the storm is over?" "Oh, thank you, I'll make it all right," Nancy said in reply and hurried on. She took a shortcut through a neighbor's driveway, arriving breathless at her own home just as a jagged streak of lightning cut the sky behind her. It was followed by a deafening crash of thunder. Hannah Gruen, the Drews' middle-aged housekeeper, met Nancy at the door. "Thank goodness you're home safe," she cried in relief. The kindly woman cared for the motherless girl as lovingly as if she were her own daughter, and worried a great deal whenever she thought harm might befall her. The rain, which lasted for 20 minutes, came down in such torrents that for a time everything was blotted from view. When it ended, Nancy gazed ruefully from a window at her garden. She was dismayed to see the tall hollyhocks snapped off near the ground. Clumps of painted daisies were flattened in the mud. "My lovely garden is a wreck," she said to Mrs. Gruen. "And why, my goodness!" The girl dashed out of doors. The housekeeper followed, wanting to know what the trouble was. Nancy stared in consternation at the flower border. "My beautiful new rose bushes!" she gasped. "They're gone!" Where 4 choice bushes had been planted only the week before, there now appeared 4 gaping holes filled with water. "I suppose the wind," began Mrs. Gruen. "I'm sure it wasn't the wind, because the bushes would be around somewhere, and they're not." Nancy objected, already searching the garden. "I planted them very deep anyway. I'm afraid they've been stolen." "But who would take them?" asked the housekeeper. "I don't know, but good rose bushes are scarce this year, and ours were rare specimens." "The police should be notified," Hannah Gruen said with determination, and went into the house to telephone to them. Nancy continued to gaze about the garden. Except for the rose bushes, no other shrubs or plants were missing. It was very mystifying, and even more so when Mrs. Gruen appeared to say that the same kind of loss had been reported by other people. An investigator would be sent to the Drew home to make an inspection. "There's no question but that your rose bushes were stolen, Nancy," the woman added grimly. "And I'm afraid they won't be recovered," sighed Nancy. "Unless you should decide to search for them yourself," Hannah Gruen said with a twinkle in her eye. "As a detective, I certainly favor you over anyone on the River Heights police force." Nancy smiled at the compliment. Modest and unassuming, she never would admit she possessed any particular talents. Nearly everyone in River Heights, however, knew that the girl was as clever as she was pretty. Over a span of a few years, she had solved many baffling mysteries. As Nancy and the housekeeper busied themselves gathering up debris from the garden, they heard the familiar song of one of the River Heights' well-known characters. "Here comes old Me Hearty down the street," Nancy laughed, shaking off her somber mood. "Do you want any clams today?" "I do not," Mrs. Gruen said with emphasis. "But if I know Me Hearty, he'll probably talk me into buying some anyway." The old man, once a sailor, had received his nickname from Nancy when she was a little girl. He often addressed other people as Me Hearties, and sang nautical songs, including these words. Little Nancy had gotten the whole thing mixed up and called him Me Hearty Man. Her nickname had stuck to him. Me Hearty was a good-natured, lovable person, full of yarns of the sea. An injury on shipboard had kept him on land for many years. He dug clams in the nearby river and sold them for a living. The man's cart bell tinkled merrily, and a moment later the jolly, weather-beaten old fellow rounded the corner of the driveway, wheeling his little wagon. Spying Nancy and the housekeeper, he began to carol. "Clams by the bushel, clams by the lot, clams for the kettle, clams for the pot." "None for us today," Mrs. Gruen called, starting toward the house. Old Me Hearty smiled his most winning smile. "Real cheap today," he coaxed. "You can't turn down me clams, Me Hearties. Why, my clams are nutritious, my clams are delicious, my clams are delectable, my clams are respectable." Nancy laughed, and Mrs. Gruen said seriously, "I'm in no mood to buy clams, respectable or otherwise, right now. We've just discovered that 4 of our best rose bushes have been stolen." "You don't say," the old man's blue eyes roved to the gaping holes in the flower border. "Now that's what I call bad luck, ma'am. But you can turn it into good luck if you've a mind to." "How, may I ask?" "By buying Me Hearty's good Muskoka River clams." "And in what way would that help?" "Why, you might find a pearl in one of them," the old fellow chuckled. "Then you could use the money to buy a dozen rose bushes." "Did anyone ever find a pearl in one of your clams?" Nancy inquired curiously. Just ask Jasper Hawkins on Pinewood Point," the old man boasted. "'Twarn't a very big pearl, nor a very valuable one, but a pearl just the same. Jasper sold it, too." "Upon second thought," remarked Mrs. Gruen, "I believe I could use a dozen or 2 of your clams, Me Hearty. Nancy, please run into the house for my purse." The girl darted away, returning with the pocketbook and a container for the clams. After the old sailor had gone down the street, singing about his wares, she and Hannah bore their purchase into the spick-and-span kitchen. "I wish we could find a pearl," Nancy remarked, smiling. "What I couldn't do with a little extra cash right now." "Oh, then suppose you help me open the clams," the housekeeper suggested, handing the girl a sharp knife. "Maybe you'll find a pearl. I've heard that somebody in River Heights once found a large one in the Muskoka River clam." "Then there's a chance for me," said Nancy, starting her work with gusto. "Have a care or you'll slash off a finger. That knife is sharp," Hannah Gruen advised. Nancy nodded and paid close attention to her task. Soon she had a pile of empty clamshells, but no pearl. "Bother," she exclaimed impatiently. "I don't believe Me Hearty's clams ever have anything in them but meat. I'm glad this is the last one." Cutting it open, Nancy glanced carelessly inside. As she was about to toss away the shells, a tiny object in one of them drew her attention. Scarcely daring to hope what it might be, she examined the shell. Embedded in it was a small white object. "I have found a pearl," she cried, holding it out for the housekeeper to see. The woman stared at the pearl. "I declare it is one," she acknowledged, "and it may be worth money." "I'll take it downtown to old Mr. Weatherby and ask him," said Nancy eagerly. Sam Weatherby was a dealer in curious and old jewelry. Bubbling over with excitement, the girl removed the pearl, washed it, and took it to the old man's shop. Once there, she was annoyed to have to wait 15 minutes while an unpleasant man bargained with the shop owner over the price of an antique watch charm he hoped to sell. At last, the customer pocketed some money and turned on his heel, remarking, "I might as well have given it to you." That was Hector Keep, the lawyer. Mr. Weatherby remarked to Nancy after the man had left. How he loves to argue. If all my customers were like him, I'd have to close up shop. Well, what can I do for you, Miss Drew? Removing the pearl from her purse, Nancy asked the curio dealer for an estimate of the value. Well, well, the man said, examining the object carefully. Pretty nice. It's worth a fair sum. Where'd you get this? From a Muskoka River clam. A look of astonishment spread over the man's face. In a few moments he mumbled, I once bought a river pearl from Jasper Hawkins, but I never expected to see another one so good. You'll buy mine? Nancy asked eagerly. I will, and pay you a good price, too, if you'll bring me the shells from which it was taken. I want to display the pearl with them. The dealer smiled. I suppose now we'll have a rush of folks digging clams. Nancy replaced the pearl in her pocketbook and hastened from the shop to get the desired shells. So intent was she upon her good fortune that she failed to observe a strange-looking young man who had been standing outside the shop and who now followed only a few paces behind her. Unaware of impending trouble, Nancy carried her purse lightly under her arm. Presently, she passed a department store on the street thronged with shoppers and gazed into the windows. The man drew closer to Nancy. Then, so suddenly that she scarcely knew what happened, he jerked the purse from beneath her arm and fled. And that is the suspenseful ending of our first chapter. Thanks so much for letting me read with you. I hope you have a nice day.